Addictions touch even the best Christian families right here in San Diego. This is Recovery Radio San Diego with Todd Cunningham of Pacific Hills Treatment Center and Recovery Options Network, along with John and Leslie Savage on KPRZ weekdays at 6:30. Stay with us for real-life stories, help from Christian experts, what works and what doesn't work, and local area resources for you and your family. Welcome to Recovery Radio San Diego.
Good evening. You're listening to 1210 AM KPRZ. This is a brand new radio program about addictions and self-destructive behaviors and God's gift of recovery. Welcome to Recovery Radio. My name is John Savage, and I am a grateful recovering addict. I'm one of 3 members of this new local radio ministry. Recovery Radio is a daily program heard Monday through Friday at this time, and its sole mission is to assist addicts and their families by providing professional, local resources to get the help they need so that they could live a healthy and productive life. I believe that man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And to do that, you first must surrender from your destructive behaviors. Then seek forgiveness and acknowledge what Christ did for you on the cross. From there, that's where my freedom began. Others involved in this radio ministry is my wife, Leslie, who throughout my period of drug abuse and now through my recovery has stuck by me. And I'm very grateful and thankful for her for that. Our third partner in the program is Todd Cunningham. His role with Recovery Radio is to work with those seeking to change their lives through recovery. He especially enjoys working with the family members and helping them make decisions to improve their lives. At any time, Monday through Sunday, 24 hours a day, if you'd like to get in touch with somebody about your recovery and the road to begin again, contact Todd. He can be reached at area code 949-973-9140. Todd will take calls from family members, from addicts. You want to know about what is involved with recovery, how to begin the first aid, the immediate first aid, Todd's got the answers for you, and he can be reached at area code 949-973-9140. You can also ask him about our scholarship programs while you're talking to him. We have 1-for-1 financial matching grants. You know, everybody is struggling in this economy, and the last thing that we want is not to get somebody into treatment, especially when they want to get into treatment. So with that, we are working with a great ministry up in San Juan Capistrano. It's called Pacific Hills Treatment Centers. And they've put together a very interesting program. And if you'd like to hear more about our scholarship programs, if you're a large church in the community and you have people in your congregation that is struggling and you need to get them the immediate help that they need, contact Todd at area code 949-973-9140. Or if you're a local San Diego employer and you know somebody in your business that's struggling with a substance abuse problem, we've got a scholarship program that we'd like to talk to you about. That's 949-973-9140. You know, my recovery journey began for me 3 years ago. I surrendered while I was locked up in a Tijuana jail cell. But for 2 years leading up to that day of surrender, I'd been abusing prescription medication, which then quickly led to a 6 to 8 OxyContin habit per day. That's a lot of OxyContin. And with that, I was mixing cocaine, and I was out of control. But my turning point was that arrest in Tijuana, when I met God in that jail cell, and I surrendered, and I admitted that my life was unmanageable, and I was powerless over my behaviors. So over the last 3 years of my sobriety, I have a new and a renewed purpose in my life. This radio ministry is one of those purposes, and I'm very thankful to be reunited with my family and here today to talk about recovery. You know, all this week we've been talking with Keith Hankinson with Hankinson Interventions, and Keith is with us today. Keith, how are you this afternoon?
Real good. How are you today, John?
Great. I'm glad you came back for a third day.
Yes, it's been great being on the show.
Well, we're happy about that because, taking that first step, generally, if it was me, I was completely out of control. You would need a professional services such as yours and your son, Shane.
Yeah, and you probably would not have been very happy when your family and friends had shown up, at first at least. You know what?
I would be happy today.
Yes,
You just don't know what's on the other side. And
That's right.
God has I have a renewed purpose in my life, and God's got a plan for me, and I'm just trying to do His will every day. But you've got to start, and sometimes it takes professionals such as your company. Listen, thanks for coming back again. Let's talk about your company and what you and your son are doing in the intervention field, in the addiction field, and how you help people.
Okay. Well, I've been doing this since 1975. My son has been involved for 15 years. I think collectively, John, we probably, between Shane and I, have done well over 1,200 interventions. We service all 50 states. We do some work in other countries. I think we've been in just about 13 countries. We intervene or interrupt with all the addictive processes of alcohol, drugs, gambling, sexual addictions. We will interrupt or intervene with people who are struggling with mental illnesses and eating disorders. For example, anorexia, bulimia, anorexic bulimia, morbid obesity. John, will even intervene and help families reclaim a runaway teenager. Portland, Oregon, of course, is the capital there along Interstate 5 that comes up from Mexico, and that's the real drug corridor in our country, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So there's so many lost souls on the West Coast, and we do a very unique process of helping families reconcile to their runaway teenager. So pretty much any pattern of human behavior where a young person or an adult is struggling and they're stuck, they're feeling powerless, and they're feeling hopeless, they're feeling despair. And the family intervention process is a real biblical process of throwing a rope to an individual. But even if he won't grab hold, like we were joking at the beginning of the show, if they refuse to grab the rope, well, then we'll come down in the pit of despair and the hole of hopelessness, and the family member will tie that rope around his son or daughter, and we'll pull up slowly, and they can be kicking and screaming and hollering and shouting, and we're not going to go away, and we're not going to shame them or degrade them, or we're going to be respectful and loving just the way our Lord Jesus Christ treats us, and we're going to just love them into treatment. We're not going to accept no. We're going to do it in a very professional, methodical way, but we're going to pull them out of that hole of despair and hold them accountable. You see, in today's society, John, we so often see a passivity. Well, let them go, let God. Until they hit bottom, there's nothing you can do. Oh, don't offer an addict help unless he's hit bottom, because he'll never get help. They have to want help. Don't spend any money unless they absolutely want help. Well, see, we don't believe in those things. We believe that family can do a tremendous amount of things. The modern intervention process is a very proactive, courageous love instead of a passive love that is in despair and gives up. And so that's what my son and I do, is we help families all around the country interrupt and intervene in their loved one's life before it ends in a disaster.
You're listening to 1210 AM KPRZ. This is Recovery Radio for San Diego, and the voice you're hearing is Keith Hankinson. And, you just made a great comment a moment ago, and that was hitting bottom. So many people out there will say you've got to hit your bottom before you can turn and walk that road. And, I'm not buying that.
No.
I'm just not buying that. Yeah, sure, there might be some truth to that, but a bottom could be prison.
That's right.
A bottom could be death. And I got to tell you, I believe that I was just a couple of weeks away when I was out using, because in the end, I was living in Mexico.
Yeah.
And, with everything that's going on in Mexico these days, I know I was just weeks away from death. And so I'm really glad to hear you say that about bottom, because you know what? I think I was ready probably a year and a half prior to my end. Sure. If it was intervened in a right way using professionals such as you. So let's talk about intervention and family interventions and how all that comes together.
Okay. Well, John, a lot of counselor types like myself, we describe a family as a system. In Webster's dictionary, it describes a system as interrelated parts. So we live in the solar system. If Mars was in trouble and burned up in outer space, boy, would that affect planet Earth. And see, in a family, everyone's life affects everyone else. And so when there's a person in despair because of addiction or some other compulsive behavior or high-risk behavior, it affects every single family member. And so the reason, in my opinion, the reason why so many people stay stuck, now maybe this was true in your case also, but the reason people don't get help more often than they do is because the family system is stuck. They're spinning their tires in the mud. They're not moving forward. They're becoming affected by their loved one's illness. That's why sometimes alcohol or drug addiction is nicknamed a family illness or a family disease. And so to have effective interruption or intervention for the addict, we have to interrupt the family first. We have to help them in a very respectful, loving way, begin to realize that the system has to change. So, for example, what if a well-meaning father and mother are propping up their son's life, and they're paying their rent, and they're paying for the car insurance, and they're giving them food? Maybe they're wise enough not to give them cash for food, but they at least buy them the groceries. Well, you see, that insulates an addict's life because you know what denial is like and delusion is like.
Right.
And so if an adult child has been propped up and enabled, they kind of look at their life and go, well, gee, I'm not as bad off as I thought. I've got a decent place to live. I've got food. I've got some transportation. Whereas if the family had not propped them up and enabled, they would have experienced the natural consequences of a life out of control sooner. And so we like to interrupt in the family system and get to have that operate different than it has in the past. And then we believe there's a greater hope of the person who's addicted to getting the help they deserve.
You're listening to 1210 AM KPRZ. This is Recovery Radio, a new radio program about addictions and God's plan for you in your life through the gift of recovery. And on the phone with us this afternoon is Keith Hankinson. He and his son Shane do interventions and have successfully done well over 1,200 interventions over the years that they've been practicing. And today we're talking about the family approach to intervention. And so what are the benefits for the family when the patient enters an actual treatment program?
You know, there are so many benefits. The first one that a lot of families experience, John, is that they can just collapse. They can just fall down on the couch and say, thank you, God. Thank you. Mary is in treatment. John is safe tonight. Susan can have a peaceful, restful, safe night in treatment tonight. So usually the first responses are just grateful. They're so tired. They're so emotionally drained from that addicted individual's life, pulling on the family financially, emotionally, spiritually. Can you imagine the prayers, the tears, the dollars that an average family across America pours into the hole of despair of addiction? And so we often see that the first benefit is they can just start to heal themselves, and they can start to do life differently now that the addicted individual is in treatment. Another benefit is that they have a break from them. That most treatment centers, John, don't let a person call family or friends for at least 5 days because they want them to concentrate on their broken life and concentrate on allowing God to start to rebuild their life and to concentrate on the group therapy and the individual counseling sessions. The addict starts to sleep normal and starts to eat normal. They're not constantly on the phone, constantly texting. You see, an unmanageable life sometimes tries to manage their life with compulsive telephone calls. I call it telephonitis, where you're trying to manage this unmanageable life by slipping and sliding and conning and convincing people and manipulating people. And so a typical addict is often on the phone so much, and And now the family has a break. They don't have to be drained from the multiple phone calls. Now the family can start to pray more calmly for their loved one while they're in treatment. They can trust God for the healing process. The family members can go to Al-Anon. The family members could go to the Betty Ford Center for the family program.
Yeah.
The family can start to get personal counseling themselves on the price that addiction has cost in that marriage. Just imagine, John, the stress on a typical Christian marriage when someone's son or daughter is out of control and you weep as you fall asleep, crying out for the life of your son or daughter and crying out to God for protection over their life. Well, that puts a strain on a marriage. It puts stress on husbands and wives. Maybe the mom and dad see it real differently how to deal with addiction, and so they're at odds with each other. And so often that's the case because sometimes one parent thinks the tough approach is better and the other parent thinks to be kind and gentle, and so you often have a conflicting view of how best to approach an addicted individual's life. And so another thing is that husbands and wives can start getting into counseling themselves and see how that addicted family member has affected their relationship. Another benefit, John, of a loved one being in treatment is they get to look forward to a family weekend or a family week where they start to honestly talk to their loved one with the help of counselors, and they can not attack or blame, but they can just, like one treatment center calls it truth and love, where they can speak truth in a loving, protective environment. Mm-hmm. So the benefits are numerous for family members also. The whole family can get well together.
When I envisioned this show actually 3 years ago, and we've been on the air now for about 3 months or so, and it's been wonderful. Lots of people calling. But, I'll be honest with you. I think the majority of the calls that we get, Keith, are from the family.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, really, they just don't know what to do. And, as much as I want to help the addict, but I to be honest to say, I don't know how many addicts are actually listening to this radio program, because most of the calls that we get, that Todd takes, who's not here today, are from people looking for a solution for their loved one, or looking for a solution for someone that they're working with. They see their coworker just going down, and they don't know what to do. I started this show out earlier, just moments ago, by giving our telephone number for, we've got a scholarship program, and yesterday and even the day before you had mentioned that you've got a scholarship program because, look, this is a tough time economically, and you were generous the other day to give out your telephone number as well as talk about a little bit of your scholarship. Would you please do that for us right now?
Oh, sure. It's Hankinson Intervention at 770-207-5881. Mm-hmm. Again, that's 770-207-5881, Hankinson Intervention. We're based out of Atlanta, Georgia, John.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that you playing on the piano, or is that just your cell phone?
That's a cell phone I forgot to turn off.
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
At least it's a nice musical melody.
I was going to say, you can multitask very well there on the piano. So let's talk about what happens when a person comes back to the family after graduating successfully from one of these treatment programs.
Well, when the loved one comes back to the family, of course, the family rules have to be changing. They have to be conducive to ongoing recovery. And so the WISE family will, in a loving way, hold a person accountable to that 1 year aftercare plan. As you maybe know in your own recovery, John, that 1 year seems to be such an important mile marker. It's one thing to not drink or drug for 30 days. It's another thing to not use drugs or drink for 60 days. But just think of all the healing with relationships, finances, spiritual healing, the healing of the brain at that 1 year mile marker. So,
I thought that people were out of their minds when they told me that they thought that I should probably go into a program for 90 to maybe 100 to 6 months, 180 days. I just thought that they were out of their mind.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you something. I sucked up every single day when I was in there. I loved it. After I got into the program, I realized that I needed something a little bit more than that 28-day program, which was very important. But it's really more than that.
Sure.
And what you're describing is so true.
And see, most treatment centers in the country, I know Pacific Hills have really good programs to extend it to 60, 90, even half of a year or a year. Most treatment centers have the extended care, where some call it halfway houses, some call it sober living houses, or extended care. But the point is that, like you say, after that 30 days, they have skills and tools to work on their recovery. They've had 30 days of being free of alcohol and drugs.
Right.
But see, now it's a process of learning to live out in the real world, and that's where an extended program, a halfway house, sober living house, is so important, where they have the accountability of and support of other clients that have graduated from the program. They have the support and accountability of staff that they know. They can continue often with that same counselor weekly for sessions. They can maybe have a part-time job or do some volunteer work, have the safety of living in that sober living house, the random drug testing. And so most treatment centers know that it's crucial that some people stay in that protective, supportive treatment recovery environment, you might call it, for 6 months to a year to get off to really a good start.
You're listening to 1210 AM KPRZ. This is Recovery Radio for San Diego, a new program that is on the radio discussing recovery Monday through Friday at this time. And with me on the telephone this evening is Keith Hankinson, who he and his son have been doing successful interventions for combined, it sounds like 45 plus years.
Well, I started in 1975, so I've been doing it for 35 years, and my son for 15 years, and it's just a wonderful ministry to be in, John.
You know, you mentioned, we've been talking a little bit about long-term centers, and, you know, we can call this a shameless plug, but there's a wonderful place here in San Diego County. I mean, once you get the professional treatment from the folks up at Pacific Hills Treatment Center or wherever that may be, sometimes you need an extended period of time. Wonderful men's and women's home up in the Ramona area called In His Steps, a Christian, let's just call it a halfway house. But if you'd like information about that, you can send us a note, and I can get you in touch with Bob Denny up in Ramona, who just runs and been doing it for 20-plus years. But today we're talking about intervention. So when you walk people through that intervention process, I mean, how do you follow up with them down the road? I mean, do you have communications with these people?
You know, as part of our professional fees, we allow family members who were on the intervention team to consult with us for the first 30 days that their loved one is in treatment. And yet after that, John, it would be another full-time ministry to just track with all the families that we've worked with. So unfortunately, our relationship pretty much stops at the end of that 30 days.
Right.
And we often get the cards and the letters and the phone calls about annual, sobriety dates and parties being held for sobriety dates and all that.